Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 314 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ialon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together, as well as college students together. Fun fact, my dad has traveled all over the world. He's been to every continent, and by far his favorite trip was to Alaska. He said that the nature and the beauty of it can't be matched anywhere in this world. He actually went on a fishing boat while he was there. He caught a marlin, of all things, somehow, and then he sent it to a company in Alaska that will can your fish and then mail it to your house. And I think that he's still eating marlin to this day, probably about 10 years later. So there you go. There's my Alaska story. And our next guest, of course, is from Alaska. Her name is Michaela K. Canterbury. She is a lawyer and a writer. Michaela obtained her JD at Gonzaga University of Law in Spokane, Washington, and graduated from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a BA in political science and a minor in philosophy. Michaela is licensed to practice law in Alaska. She is also the owner, operator, and lead trial lawyer at Kelly and Canterbury LLC, where she works with her husband, Christopher, who is her partner in all things. And Michaela resides in Eagle River, Alaska, with Christopher, where they raise their son, their daughter, and of course their dogs in the same valley and woods where she was raised. Welcome to the show, Michaela.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course, of course. I mean, listen, we can probably talk about Alaska for days because it literally is the most beautiful place on God's green earth. I mean, it
Absolutely.
just is. I mean, you try. You're gonna have to try very hard to name a place better than that because I don't think it exists, to be quite honest with you.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I figured you wouldn't. And you get the privilege of, living there every single day. You were raised in Eagle River, Alaska. Talk to our audience a little bit about what it was like to grow up there and then raise your kids there now.
Yeah, growing up in Eagle River, Alaska was idyllic. It was exciting and it felt safe. It was the mid 70s when my parents decided to drive the Alcan and take the ferry to Alaska. And Alaska was considered wild and free and uncharted territory with lots of opportunity, for like small business or fishing, and a lot of military up here too, with several bases, Army bases and Air Force bases and such. So just a lot of opportunity. And it was the mid 70s to late 80s when I was growing up, like raised in Alaska. And it's still it was still a young state. It still is a young state.
Yeah.
My parents built a house in the wooded wilds of undeveloped area outside of Anchorage, and they laid their own foundation, did their own water, did their own sewer, and built a house. And there was only one street in our little community. And then when I graduated high school, I went outside, and we call it going outside to go to school, or going outside to play sports, and go to the lower 48, as we call you all, for college and law school. And then I returned in the mid 90s to work the law practice with my dad. And then I was on a street corner and became acquainted with a fellow that I went to high school with. And we were charmed with each other, and the fact that we knew all the same people and such, and we got engaged and got married and had kids. And raising a family in the same forested valley where I was raised, with the community members that we went to high school with and we grew up with, and the grown-ups that looked after us when we were younger, is a special blessing that I'm just so gratified that my children are a part of. I mean, there's just a special blessing there when you have a network of family, as I call it, where everyone has your back and your family's back in the ways that they can, in their unique ways.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you found that. I think that is so important. I mean, I lived in New York for a very, very long time. I still consider myself a New Yorker. It's really hard to get that out of you once it's in. You know, there were places in New York that, I mean, people were just so busy and so stressed out that they didn't really get an opportunity to meet their neighbors and really form that community. And now, you know, living in Tennessee, it's very different, where families really look out for one another. It's very common to have the neighbors' kids at our house or our kids at their house, and it's really just one extended family, really. You know, it's really nice that you find those pockets in different places in the country, and I just think it's so important to have that level of community. I'm glad you found it, but it's just not everywhere, I guess, is the point. So.
100%. 100%. And we got a taste of that when when COVID hit and
Mhm.
my adult children came back to Alaska, and they brought they brought their girlfriends and their boyfriends and their dogs, and we kind of, when we were all was isolating. Alaskans have been isolating since the 50s, so we get that. But when my young adult college children and came back and brought their friends that they met at college and stuff, we kind of started, well, when we were able to share that and the wilds and loveliness of Alaska, but then also build this community spirit, with and extend that beyond, to the low 48ers.
To the lower 48ers. That's exactly right. Now, when you were in the lower 48ers, you decided on Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, of course, for your undergraduate studies. So tell our audience, why did you choose Duquesne?
Well, when you're raised in Alaska, you kind of feel like you're in this outliers bubble.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you're, 18, a, young adult just on the cusp of your, woo, I'm going to go do this stuff, right? I wanted to be a part of like timely release of music and fashion and electronics. It's the 80s and all those things that are important to 18 and 20-year-olds and some things. And so those kinds of things usually don't, or they didn't at the time, arrive in Alaska until 2 to 5 years later. So I wanted to go to real concerts. I wanted to shop at a place other than J.C. Penney's and Sears for clothes. And it was important for me to attend a university that was outside the state of Alaska in a safe urban setting and have that experience. And Pittsburgh is the perfect city for a small town girl to have like a big city experience. It has everything. It's got great sports teams. It's got a diverse culture. There's blue and white collar workers that respect each other for the skills that they possess. And there was the added bonus that my paternal grandparents lived in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and one of my aunties was attending law school at Pitt. So added
Very
bonus.
cool. Yeah, Pittsburgh is a great city. Of course, the city of bridges in Pittsburgh, and lovely, lovely place. Great place to go to school for sure. And you wrote your debut memoir. It's called Sister Siren. I see the cover there in the background. This is a nonfiction book, and you talk about addiction. It's really a guide on how to love an addict. So, talk to our audience about the ups and downs of being a sister of an addict.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the downs. I'll start with the downs.
Mhm.
The uh, for some background is that I'm 13 years older than my sister. So there's this generation and a half, if you will, age gap between us. So my parents had a built-in babysitter kind of, and I was like a really cool sub parent. So my sister and I have a unique sibling relationship where, for me at least, there was this sense of responsibility and maternal situation. So I kind of want to set the stage as to the uniqueness of our sibling relationship.
Mhm.
um, Anywho, with that, the downs certainly are witnessing how low a loved one's rock bottom can get. That's a low. It makes my eyes water and my chest fill up just to think about those times, um, and witnessing a loved one just overcome and possessed, if you will. I mean, that's how I looked at it. She was possessed by this addiction. It possessed her, and so that was a low for me. And um, stepping into what I call RFFs, air quotes, RFFs, red flag feelings. I was the kind of person that, who, don't get angry over something. I was afraid of slipping into depression. I didn't want to show my anger or my resentment towards family members for anything. I was always like the poly positive and the I can fix this and yada yada. So that was really a challenge for me, as well as stepping into my RFFs of grief and anger and fear and resentment. The ups, however, on the flip side, are when a family, or family as I call it, friends and family, or friends that are family, and you have a lot of that in Alaska, come together and stand calmly together in the crazy chaos that is addiction. And we are all connected in truth and love, and we are standing there together. And so that's a positive, that's an up, that's a something that's like, pooh, huge. And also witnessing your loved one that's an addict, the addict that you love, their strength, their resilience. When you see, even if it's just a flicker of their inner light, and you see it because you've known them their whole life, and you can see it getting bigger, and little by little they're overcoming things, that's an up. And being there with them for these little things that end up turning into big things. Also, getting to, when you have that trust with the addict that you love, being able to hold the non-judgmental space for each other to noodle through whatever's happening, whatever's on their path, and helping them noodle through what's the most beneficial way for them to navigate what's before them. And then the genuine gratitude and joy of successes and milestones. This March, we will be honoring and celebrating, I'm getting truth bumps, my sister's 4 years in recovery from heroin and meth addiction.
Wow. Congratulations. I mean, that is a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
Absolutely huge. So good for you. Good for your sister. I love seeing it, and that's definitely worth celebrating. I've known so many high functioning addicts in my life. What are some ways that you can spot a high functioning addict?
Yeah, I learned this in retrospect because I come from a family of high functioning professionals. I mean, my day job is I'm a trial lawyer. I'm married to a trial lawyer. My dad's a trial lawyer. My mom's a PhD, was head of her department at the University of Alaska. And my sister was a college athlete, high performing. I mean, she was even going to try, she was considering trying out for like the Seattle, whatever the women's team was. I want to say it's the Sounders or something like that for soccer. But she chose the educational path and got her master's in counseling. And she was performing highly. So there was, the coaches didn't know, our community didn't know, she get good grades. None of us knew. We're all going about life doing great, So I'm able to share these in retrospect because at the time, obviously, I didn't know. So here we go. There's always a crisis. That's something that there's always a crisis. There's, car accidents, flat tires, things are getting stolen, jobs are getting lost, or demotions, or people stealing clients, or things like that. There's always this kind of crisis and an inability to manage the dailies of life, whether it's bills or their calendar, or they're easily overwhelmed, and legal problems, like they get into car wrecks or things like that. So there's always being a crisis, and it's always somebody else's situation, okay, for the crisis. Be aware of their appearance. With my sister, she always was, stylish and fit. I mean, she was an elite athlete. but she started to dress with, well, she became disheveled. She always wore long sleeves. So I wouldn't see, track marks and bruises and such, layers. She started wearing hats. I wouldn't see, I started to see like her complexion was changing and she was losing hair from her eyebrow. That's actually a condition. It starts with a T. It's a long word that starts with a T. I defined it in the book. I just can't remember it right now. But it's actually where addicts like pick their hair. It's an obsessive situation. And so she started wearing hats and drawing on her makeup and things like that. So just being aware of the appearance. And whenever I would ask her, hey, what's going on? It looks like, are you okay? There was always a legitimate excuse. Oh, I have this dermatological condition and I'm taking medication for it. Yeah, she's taking medication for it. Anyway, I just didn't know what the medication was. So you also want to look for like sores on the body, skin complexion, picking at their hair, their teeth. Look at the health of their teeth. Nodding off during conversations, twitching sometimes, and trembling is another thing to just note. There's also mannerisms and behavior. Everything is overwhelming. As I mentioned before, their ability to hold down a job, manage their life, legal problems, their mood and behavior can toggle between extremes, with panic and fear to very reactionary, defensive, anger, and then placidity. Medical conditions, being sick all the time. That was another thing my sister would say. Oh, I'm sick, and I'd bring her chicken soup, and I'd make pumpkin cookies, and I'd show up at her place, and she'd never invite me in. That was another thing. Never invite me in. I now know why, and I knew she was sick. She was dope sick. But I just didn't even know what that was, And so I thought, oh, okay. And she would say, oh, I don't want to bring you in. I don't want to get you sick, But I was never invited in, and now I know why. She was hiding what was going on in there. So medical conditions and sick all the time, always late or not showing up, isolating and withdrawing from family. So she started not coming to family events, and her birthday's during the winter holidays, and so is my daughter's. And so the winter holidays are always kind of fun around our place because there's a lot around our family and stuff, but just not showing up to gatherings and family barbecues and gatherings that our friends were having. We have a lot of barbecues in Alaska in the summer when the sun's up all the time, and so just not participating in those, and having kind of these new friends that are scary looking. And just seeing that their light is going out, going from how you know them to be, to something that's just kind of gray and just kind of gray. So those are the things that I would just tell people to keep an eye on, be aware of.
Excellent clues there for sure. Now, the holidays are just around the corner. We got Thanksgiving coming up in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, Christmas right after. Great time of year, but it's also a very difficult time of the year for people with addictions. And this is now her 4th year of sobriety. So this is great, I think, for us to talk about now. How can you best support an addict during those difficult holiday months?
Yeah, great question, because the holidays and everything around them, and like I said, my sister's birthday is during the holiday season. Actually, my sister's birthday, my daughter's birthday are the bookends for the 12 days of Christmas. So that's kind of fun.
That's cool.
I think it's cool too. But there's a lot of expectations, and so the first thing I would recommend is educate yourself on your loved one's addiction and what their triggers may be, and prepare for that, or be knowledgeable of that, just conscious of that. Also, talk with your friends and family to plan the gatherings and set realistic expectations about well, how do we want to socialize as a group or as a family? And I mean, we do that. I mean, my kids are hockey players, and so we like to skate. We also like to ski, and so there's a lot of consider hosting sober events, whatever the addiction is. I mean, the addiction could be gambling, or I mean, there's a lot of addictions out there, but
Right.
whatever the event that you're hosting, remove or have other options for the addicts that you love, and options that do not trigger. Also, plan for space between um, um, folks that well are going to be antagonistic or triggering for the addict that you love. Also, talk with the addict you love and say, hey, if you need an exit plan, come to me and I'll help that. Let's make sure we have that so you're not triggered. If this, then that. If Uncle Bob does this, which he always does, what's the plan B? If this, then that, come to me. I'm your buddy. And so those are the best kind of tips and tools I can give to support the addict you love during the holiday season, or any really big event, weddings, graduations, all of these, Halloween, everything. It can be there's expectations around it about how people are going to show up. And just let the addict you love know you're there. You can be their buddy in their exit plan, and you're going to have options. We're going to make sure that there's options there for you.
Mm-hmm. You talked about when you were taking care of your sister, all the work that was involved in terms of, making her meals and cookies and all of these things that you would drop off. And I'm sure you were willing to do whatever, in order to support her. But what about your own self-care when you love an addict? I mean, how were you carving out time for yourself in this process when you're also trying to take care of your sister?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That was a huge thing for me because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm the fixer. I'm also an overgiver. I'm that person, you know. And so I uh, I got counseling. I needed a safe place that was 100% for me, that I could put everything, um, whether it was how addiction affected my relationship and how my support of the addict that I love. And I could not stop loving her. I couldn't just turn it off, and only love her like Wednesday and Thursday, and that's, but how that affects my relationship with my husband, my, our relationship in raising our kids who were teenagers at the time. I had a lot of fear around that. And how am I going to step into this community where we were both raised? Everybody knows us, knows our parents. I mean, the court system, hello, she was coming in and out of that. And I'm an officer of the court, and so was my dad, And so I needed to care for myself. And so don't be afraid, don't be ashamed, don't be scared to get some counseling and take care of yourself that way. And so you can navigate these important relationships in your life and how they're all going to exist and coexist. There's a lot of, in addition to counseling, there's a lot of support for families that have addicts that they love. I participate and still do to this day, Naranon, which is a family support group for friends and family that have of addicts. Again, my sister was a heroin and meth addict, and she also was pill popping because of injuries and stuff that she had. Anywho, I also go to Al-Anon. Her boyfriend, who she met in rehab, is in recovery as well, and so we're supporting him in his recovery. And so I go to Al-Anon, and there's Alateen, and there's support groups for everything, for codependency, for folks who suffer from your family members who have parents or siblings or whoever and who have Alzheimer's and dementia. So finding a support group, it was so beneficial for me. Also, meeting up with your friends and stepping into your community and just meeting up and really stepping into their life, not saying anything about what's happening. you know, like my sister's addiction, like I didn't want that to be my story all the time, but I wanted to, I step in with my friends. And the thing is that it ends up, I felt so alone because I wouldn't go out with my friends. But then when I started to, and I didn't want to talk about it because I'd always start to cry. It would always just come around to that. And then I wasn't alone because they cared about me and her. I developed these practices also, what I call MWBT, morning well-being time. MWBT, morning well-being time. And I would light a candle for those RFFs that I talked about earlier about grief and anger and resentment. And I would deal with my fears head on. And I would set a timer for 10 minutes. I'd light the candle and I'd meet with fear. And I learned that my biggest fear was I was afraid she was going to die. I was afraid that I was going to have to identify her body and I would have to tell my parents and that I'd have to speak at our local church and deliver the eulogy. And from that, it developed into, okay, I wrote her obituary. I wrote my obituary. I wrote the eulogy. I wrote all these things. So if that happened, I'd be able to step into that and show the love that we have for her, regardless of how this came out, because that was my biggest fear. And I would meditate and I would journal during MWBT, morning well-being time. I also had an evening routine where I do 3, 2, 1. Don't eat, stop eating 3 hours before bed. No work 2 hours before bed, and no electronics 1 hour before bed. I had a little gratitude practice, and I'd try to find the good in the day and find the blessings in the day. And sometimes I'd sprinkle in, on really good evenings, I'd sprinkle in a detox bath, which would really get me, wrap up my day and pull the shade down on the day so I could rest easy and get up the next morning and do my MWBT. And then also prepare for encounters that you intend to have with the addict that you love. Like, what can you bring to this situation? So those are the tips that I can give for self-care. Counseling, it's okay to do. Support groups, okay to do. Engage with your friends as much as you can. Develop practices that work for you in the morning and in the evening to start your day and close your day, and prepare for your encounters with the addict that you love so you can step in with love.
Thank you so much for sharing those routines. I know that's going to be helpful for a lot of people that are trying to support somebody who is an addict in their life, just to know that what that routine looks like. I think that would be extraordinarily helpful. So I think that is great. And, you also talked about some of the events that you do over the holidays. You talked about the skiing and the skating, things that you can do outside there in Alaska as a family. What about the things that we should not do with an addict? Are there some things that we should just avoid?
Yes. And this kind of goes true for people like me who love addicts.
Mm-hmm.
Like addicts are my people.
Yeah.
First, don't abandon or cut off the addict that you love or the people that love addicts, because like you're afraid it's going to get on you or something, or it's going to infiltrate you. So please don't abandon or cut off the people that you love that are suffering or struggling with addiction in their life. Rather step in with love. Please don't tell an addict or someone who loves an addict what to do. If I may share, I remember there was a time my husband and I were walking in the wooded areas and I was really struggling. It was about this time of year. It was about, just going to Thanksgiving, and I'm the one that usually hosts and cooks the turkey, and what my son was playing junior hockey at the time. And how are we gonna do Thanksgiving with, my parents here and, our son here and our daughter here, blah, blah, blah. But also on my mind was my sister, of course, because she was on the streets of Anchorage, homeless, and my heart was with her as well. And so it was really hard for me to plan. And he's like, well, we got to invite the family, of course. And I'm like, I was afraid to ask him if he still considered my sister part of the family because of what was happening. And he said, you know what you need to do with your sister? And I was like, wait a minute. My relationship with my sister is my deal. Your relationship with her is your deal. So please don't tell the addict or someone who loves an addict what they should do with their relationship. Kind of deal with your own relationship with the person that you love in the situation. So that's one thing. Also, it doesn't do well to blame, shame, argue, or fight. It just doesn't. So stepping in with love, with what you can do is the better option. Also, last two, last but not least, do not give an addict cash, and do not sign contracts with them, rental contracts or loans, because it'll just come back to bite you.
That's the attorney in you coming out.
Yeah. Well, those skills helped, I'll tell you what.
Oh boy, oh boy. All right. So, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff here. I want to wrap this up and just, talk a little bit about some of the resources that you can suggest either for an addict or the family and friends of those who love an addict. What resources, where should they be going in order to seek help?
Sure. As mentioned before, there's lots of 12-step programs or family support group programs. So Nar-Anon, Al-Anon, Alateen, Codependency Anonymous, all those things are great resources. Counseling, also recommending, if there's true medical attention, and it is there's diseases and there's coexisting diseases. For example, my sister was also assessed with ADHD, and so offering to be like an emergency contact if that's in your bailiwick and you have the space in your life to do that, but being an emergency contact for the addict you love or for the person who loves an addict, just making sure that we have those I's dotted and those T's crossed as to who their emergency contact is and are they getting medical attention for any injuries or coexisting diseases that exist. Take care of yourself, of course, with exercise and nutrition, and then show up and hold space in a way that you can. Invite your friend or the addict you love on a walk, tea, coffee, make them a meal, bring them a meal, water, bring them water or protein or good food, and things that they would need. Those are other things that I did. And I made sure that I had that for my own self. And so that I was prepared for those kinds of things. I carried Narcan in my car. I had I had a first aid kit in my car. So there's
Excellent tips. I love all of it. And to anybody who is interested in this particular topic, obviously Sister Siren, great book for you to pick up. If you're into watching movies, go and watch Dope Sick on Hulu. That is just an incredible movie, of course, based on my good friend, Dr. Stephen Lloyd. And so, there's a lot of great resources to get information about what's going on here with substance use disorder, some of the causes, and some of the solutions. But I thank you so much for sharing all of this. This is just fantastic. And you know that I do love really good food. If I have my one weakness, it's good food. And so when I do get to Anchorage one day, is there a really great restaurant in Anchorage, Alaska that I need to go and try?
I have 3.
Oh, wow. Okay, here we go. Buckle in.
A good restaurant, and I just ate there last week, is Simon and Seaforts in Anchorage. Simon and Seaforts. It has a lovely view, has great halibut cheeks. And it has, it's located right in downtown Anchorage. Some local favorites include Club Paris, which is on the main drag in Anchorage. And that's where the locals go for really good steaks.
Nice.
And the Double Muskie is near the small ski village of Girdwood and Alyeska, and they have like Cajun fare, and so that's really a good fun place that locals go as well. So the Double Muskie, Club Paris, or Simon Seaford.
Great suggestions. Cajun food in Alaska. Man, oh man.
Right?
That's fun. That's fun. Definitely going to try all three when I get there. So I will definitely let you know as soon as I get to town, because that would be so much fun. And
you better call me. We can go on a hike or something.
Absolutely. Listen, you need all the friends you can get when you get to Alaska. Like, have somebody local show you what's going on.
Yeah, we're family. Okay.
I love it. All right. So if our listeners, if they're interested in your books, or they just want to connect with you about substance use disorder and how you can help addicts that are in your life, where should they go to connect with you?
So my website, mkcanterbury.com. Canterbury, like the tails, not like a strawberry. So it's Canterbury. So mkcanterbury.com is my website. They can get the book on Amazon. They just type in Sister Siren and Michaela Canterbury. Michaela is Michael with an A, like the goddess. So Michaela Canterbury and Sister Siren, and it'll take you to Amazon and get the book there. It's also, we just got Sister Siren available in bookstores. So give your local bookstore a ring, pick up several copies so you can give them to your friends and families that love addicts as well. And I have all my tips and tools in the back with a glossary of terms that I learned. Like, I learned that DOC means drug of choice, and what a trap house is. But anyway, I got my morning well-being practice in there and my evening routines in it. So it's a good resource for people that love addicts.
Fantastic resource. It's called Sister Siren. Pick that up on Amazon or your local bookstore today. And what can I say, Michaela? You are absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for being on the show with us today and sharing all of this great information.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Michaela, make sure you like it on social media. Make sure you share it with everybody in your network, because this substance use disorder truly touches everybody on this planet. We all know somebody who's struggling. And so you just never know. Just by sharing Michaela's information, that can help somebody else that that maybe is struggling with addiction, or maybe they just love somebody who is an addict and they don't know what to do or what resources to give them. So this could really, really help. Please share it on social media. And we really enjoyed this. We hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, and we will see you next time.